And now we'll see.
Okay. Welcome. Thanks for coming along. Really, the suggestion is that this is wholeness already, and because this is wholeness already, then of course there's no teaching and there's no path. There's no progression. There isn't something else somewhere else to be found. There's no great liberation or enlightenment somewhere else. Actually, the suggestion is this is all there is already, which is already absolutely whole and complete. So in that sense, we could say that this is already liberation. This is already it. That's the good news. The bad news is because this is already wholeness, then of course, nothing's going to happen. And actually, what's meant by liberation really is the end of an experience which says this isn't wholeness. An experience which seems to arise in this, which denies this, the wholeness that it is already, seems to just sort of push it away. This experience we could call the separate experience, or the separate reality, or the dreamt reality, because actually the other part to this is that that experience is entirely dreamt. So that sort of sense to be someone who is separate, someone or something here who is separate to this, who needs to find wholeness, that's the dream. That's illusory. And what's meant by when that dream can apparently collapse. I say apparently collapse because the idea with the dream is it's just not actually there. But in this apparent collapse of the separate reality or of the individual or of the person, what's actually recognized is the wholeness that this is already. And in that sense, nothing needed to happen. But what does seem to happen in that apparent falling away or in that apparent collapse is the end of seeking, because it's the end of the need to find something. The end of the need to find something is just revealed with the obviousness that this is wholeness already. So yes, nothing needs to happen. There's no teaching. There's nothing to get from this. We're not going to get anywhere with this. This isn't going to go somewhere. So, and as already said, the sense that there is a person who is separate, who is separation, the person is separation, is entirely dreamt. It's illusory. And this experience, this illusory experience, it's I just have to say, it seems to be something just sort of felt, something sensed, something actually embodied. It's as though this sort of sense to be someone, to be separate, is embodied. It has nothing to do with a thought. It has nothing to do with a belief or a belief system. This isn't about separation, isn't a thought. The individual isn't a thought. This isn't about a dropping of belief systems or coming to believe in something else. It's nothing to do with that. What can apparently happen is this sort of felt sense to be someone, to be present, to be this awareness, this consciousness, can be revealed as being the dream. And then really what's left is just this, as it is already, just naturally and wholly itself. And that doesn't change, even with the arising of this apparent individual. That doesn't change. So that being the case, if someone would like to just come in and ask a question, we can try it that way, or you can raise your hand. I'll be able to see you. If you'd prefer not to be a part of the recording, then you can type your question into the chat that way. So really what's said at the beginning is just a kind of a conceptual framework to give some idea about what we talk about, because of course actually what's being pointed to can't be spoken of, it can't be talked about, can't be described in words, because actually what we're talking about is something energetic. This is just energy, boundless energy, wild and free energy. And because it is wild and free, it can also appear to be something trapped or something sort of a contracted energy, which gives the impression of a center or of a location. And it seems to be out of this sort of impression of a center or of a location that the dream of I am arises from or with. It's a knowing. It's kind of the first thing that's known. It's a knowing of I or I am, or actually it's here, which then sort of knowing of here, which then sort of becomes an I am here. Well, it's questioned what's here. Well, I am here. This is me. This I am here, or I seem to be here because I am feeling myself to be here. It feels like something is here, observing, aware, conscious, having an experience of everything else. And that is the dream of separation, just to be clear. So we can talk about that experience in a way, and we can sort of talk about that, how the dream seems to present itself to the individual. We can talk about that and how that sort of seems to be, but actually this can't be spoken of. Wholeness can't be spoken of because it is unknowing. It's unknowing even to itself. Wholeness isn't aware of itself as being wholeness. So in that sense, it can't be spoken of. So really, this is just a response to that dream. Because wholeness doesn't need to be spoken of. It doesn't need to be spoken to. Wholeness doesn't need to realize itself as being wholeness. That's just the need of the seeker, of the individual. And that need is never fulfilled. Even in the end, that need is never fulfilled, because what's seen, so to speak, no one sees it, of course, but what's seen is just that whole experience was never really happening. The end of the experience is the recognition that it was never real. It's never really happening. And what also seems to be revealed in that is that even that experience was absolute wholeness, just appearing in that form, in the form of a seeker or in the form of a seeking energy. So it's boundless energy appearing as the form of a contracted energy, a seeking energy, because the response to that sort of contracted sense is to then seek and try and find a way out of that. It feels uncomfortable, a bit like a straitjacket, so it wants to find a way out of that sort of contracted sense of something here. So it begins to seek and begins to look for ways out of that contracted sense. It's actually looking for the wholeness that we are all born into, that the individual feels is lost, or that energy feels is lost by the arising of the dream. But that is the dream, of course, that something's lost. The individual is the dream. The individual is the dream of separation. There isn't an individual dreaming of separation. The individual is the dream. The individual is the story. There's only one story, and that is the story of I am. That's the dream story, that I am here, I am real. I have a life. This has meaning and purpose. These are all symptoms of the separate experience. These are all things that seem to happen in the dream. I am here, I am real, I am a someone. This is real, my life is real. There are real others. I have real responsibilities. And I can make real choices and decisions in order to fulfill the obligations that I feel I need to fulfill in order to become a more fulfilled person. That's the dream. And hand up there. Chris, hi.
Hi, Neil. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, hi.
The way you describe it makes it almost sound like a kind of a cosmic kind of mistake somewhere along the line. Like it's a kind of error. Either that something in you saw through the illusion, or that we are asleep in the first place.
Well, yes, that's the illusion, that there is someone who can wake up, yeah, or someone who can become liberated. But it's not an error, it's not erroneous, it's not a mistake.
It sounds like a game.
Well, you could say it's wholeness kind of playing a game with itself, but it isn't really. And this only really sounds like a paradox. It's quite often said about this, that it's paradoxical. The message sounds paradoxical. It isn't really a paradox. So wholeness isn't really playing a game with itself. But yeah, and it's kind of a fanciful way to talk about how that seems to be. Yeah, because of course, to the individual, then that whole separate reality seems to be absolutely real. So this isn't a denial of that apparent separate experience. It's just really pointing out that it's a dream, it's illusory, so it's not really happening. But it's not an error, because of course that's also wholeness just appearing in the form of a contracted sense to be a someone, which is separation, or the dream of separation.
Okay.
Nothing's ever lost, even with the arising of the apparent individual. Nothing's lost in that. Wholeness isn't lost. That's part of the dream, that something is lost with the arising of the individual. It does seem, however, that as long as there is this sort of separate reality or separate experience, it's not a reality really, but as long as there is this kind of dream story going on that I am, it does seem to hide what was said about this being wholeness already. It seems to hide the wholeness that this is already. But only apparently, of course. But it's not a mistake. It's not erroneous. There's actually no suggestion that there's anything wrong with that at all.
It just sounds a little bit like a kind of video game where you've got to find your way back to wholeness.
Yes, well, that's the dream. Yes, of course. This is wholeness already. There's no one who has left or become lost.
Also, as you were doing your opening statement, I was just wondering, really. Well, with the internet and everything, it seems like, I mean, I wonder if this has always been like this, whether there's been random instances of this throughout the populace, but mostly we never got to know about it. And now with the internet, more people are learning about this. Maybe I don't know. It's just, I'm just theorizing. You know, I just wonder if this has always been the case. Well, a certain amount, for whatever reason. I mean, God,
I think you can find. I think it's fairly rare. I think you can find things that sort of sound like this, and I imagine that there. I'm speculating really, but I imagine there have been people, so to speak, who have been perhaps that this has happened to, so it doesn't happen to someone, but people who are sort of sharing this or talking about this. But I imagine it's much the same as today, even though there's kind of more people on the internet talking in this way. I imagine that much in the same way as today, it was just not accepted. I mean, who knows what the Buddha really said, but I imagine if a group of individuals heard someone speaking in this way, then they would have just interpreted it as it was heard, and the individual never hears it. So it would have been turned into some sort of a path or progression or teaching of some kind, is my feeling about
or they'd have been considered mad or crazy or something.
Well, quite likely, yes. Yeah. But I mean, you can find lots of incidences of people like Thomas Merton. He's quite a famous, I think he was a Trappist monk, and I don't think he was talking in this way, certainly nothing that I ever came across. But I think towards the end of his life, he sort of became quite anti the church and anti-establishment, and was looking into kind of Eastern different ideas and concepts. And I know that wasn't welcome. In fact, I've even heard there are conspiracy theories about how he died.
Right.
That the Vatican may have had something to do with it,
well,
because he was a bit of a not a charlatan. What's the word? I can't think of it, but yeah,
Heretic.
so a rebel.
Yeah.
Mm. But if there was, it wouldn't have been heard. And I think it's quite likely that if this was being said at some stage in history, as it is now by the individual, it would be taken really out of context and turned into a story of some kind about, well, there is no one, so how do we find there's no one? How do we become no one? Is it about dropping belief systems? Is it about not having thoughts about being a someone? And you would just turn it into some kind of concept or something to get from that.
Yeah, it could never be mainstream because there's just too much in it to, it just gets people's backs up. I mean, get them really very angry.
Can do, yeah.
I mean, it could produce all kinds of reactions.
It
actually.
does seem to, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Seem to. Yeah, it's threatening. It's threatening to
Definitely.
the individual. It's threatening the individual's whole reality, or what it feels, or its impression of reality. That's very threatening. Holy.
Whoops. Hi, Neil.
Hi.
In the story, I've been listening to this message for so many years, and I always loved the message and never was like really challenged.
Mm.
But I know there's no now, but it's different. It's like there's no one being challenged, but my God, the mind is just going crazy, and like imagining all kinds of crazy things. It's I know this is only what's happening, but did you have that kind of challenge? I mean,
well, this can be disturbing. Yes, of course. Yeah, because it's just not congruent with how the mind sees things. It's not in line with how the mind sees things. It's not doesn't speak to the separate experience at all.
Yeah.
So yes, it's challenging and it's threatening. Yes, and there can be all kinds of responses. So yes, if the mind's doing backflips when it hears this, then that's just what's apparently happening, of course. But that's wholeness too. That's it too. There's nothing lost or missing or incomplete about that either. And the individual seems to live in this sort of dualistic world where it's like, well, if my mind's doing backflips, then then this can't be it. This can't be what Neil's talking about if I'm having thoughts or if I'm pissed off or.
Yeah, well, there's a knowing that, this is part of it, but still, this is a knowing.
Well, it's everything. There's nothing denied.
Yeah.
Even that apparent separate experience isn't denied. That's wholeness too, just appearing as that apparent separate experience. But of course, the problem for the individual is it is that experience. That's all it knows. That's all it can see. So that separation, that separate experience, is the whole reality for the individual. Yeah.
And the apparent knower will never know it's not there. So that's
the thing. Yeah, it's not an arrival. It's the end of an experience which says this isn't it. So there is no this is it moment.
Oh yeah.
What can die is the need to know that this is it.
Can you repeat just what you just said? Because there's no What did you just say?
Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, I don't know. I can't remember.
There's no fixed moment. I mean, no.
Well, there's
Oh, I
nothing
don't.
there's nothing that's not this. It's gone. I can't remember what I said.
Yeah, okay. I just like realized it's like, yeah, maybe waiting for something to happen. Yeah. Oh, and there's none of that.
Well,
Yeah.
nothing happens.
No.
That's the thing. It's the recognition that nothing needs to happen. It's the recognition of this wholeness as being home already.
And it's not only the me that really is nothing. It's everything that is nothing.
Well, the
So-
me is no thing or nothing appearing in the form of a me, the form of a kind of contracted energy. Yeah.
But it's the same thing for all the other things. I mean,
Oh, everything is no thing. Yes, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely boundless. Yeah. It is the infinite appearing to be relative. Absolutely. Yeah. There's just no edges to it, no beginning or endings to it.
yeah, so it doesn't make any difference. So there's a me, there's no me. It's just what's happening.
No, there's no me and no things.
No me and no things. But the apparent me sees things.
Well, that's because it sort of reflects its experience of itself. I am a something. So that must mean everything else is a something too. Yeah. So really, when the me falls away, then that kind of somethingness in everything else also seems to fall away. And it is that sort of contracted sense of self melts back into the whole, and it just sort of seems to have the effect of everything else just sort of opening up.
This is really strange. Not like not knowing you're there or not. Well, I mean, you know that you're there when you feel the separation, but you don't know when you're not.
Well, no, who would know, of course, because without the knower, then there is no knowing of this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. A question in the chat. This wording, apparently happening, in quotes, apparently happening, is just for the sake to talk about it. There is not even an apparently happening, just this as it is and isn't, in brackets, for no one, right? Yeah, well, I think apparently is a good word to use to sort of give the impression or to suggest that it's not happening as a reality with a substance. It's just what's appearing to happen. So it's not real, it's not unreal, but it just doesn't have the reality that this and everything seems to have when the individual is in the dream of itself as being real also. It seems that when the individual feels that it is real, then everything else around it seems to be real also. So I think apparently is a good word to just sort of give that impression. Real and unreal, or neither real or unreal. But yeah, I guess if we're going to talk about it, there has to be words. And some words are closer than others, of course, in sort of giving the impression of what we're talking about. Yeah. But of course, talking about this is just what's apparently happening too.
Neil, could you try to? There's no you, so sorry, I get held up immediately.
Oh no, don't worry about it.
Is there any way for you to express how you how you perceive the world.
Well, that's it. There's just no longer anyone perceiving the world.
I mean, I see out of my eyes.
That's the dream. Yeah, that there is someone seeing out of those eyes. There's just seeing happening.
But you can't describe how it is different for you.
Well, I could say, well, of course, it isn't. It is indescribable. But I could say that there is just nothing having an experience of seeing out of the eyes. Seeing just naturally happens.
So it's not like some sort of wacky, fanciful 360-degree view or anything like that.
Oh, well, like a superpower, like a non-dual power.
I mean, I've heard everything. I feel from other people.
I think I have too. Yeah. No, just seeing happening. Just seeing happening. But here there is no sense that there is someone seeing.
Right. There's never any center to any of these perceptions.
No, of course not. No, that's the illusion. Yeah, that seeing is coming from a center. Yeah, there are no centers.
And I could never get any impression of what that was like through words, could I?
Well, no, of course not. But no one, another reason for that is no one gets an impression of that. It's not really an impression. That's just how it seems to be. That's just how it sort of naturally is. Just seeing happening. I would say for the individual, it seems as though everything is kind of seen through a veil, through a fog of knowing. When there is no one that, I'm almost tempted to say there is just a directness, a direct seeing and immediacy, but it's not to say, it's not to be confused with, I know there are teachings about direct experience and direct seeing. It's not to be confused with that. It's just seeing. But everything seems excuse me, everything seems to be like that for the individual. Everything is sensed through this kind of fog of knowing. Everything, all of the senses.
Which is why a lot of people say, talk about it in terms of the aliveness of everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that can be quite a shock in the beginning. Yeah.
Staring at a 1/4-inch piece of carpet for the whole day or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I remember staring at dust particles caught in a sunbeam, and I know that can be quite a nice thing to stare at for anyone, I guess. But I just never seen anything like it. It was just incredible.
Yeah, because I've heard people describe the perfection of everything, even what we'd consider to be out of place or ugly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just absolute harmony. Yeah.
See, if there was one aspect about all of this that draws me, it would be that. It would be wanting to experience this as it is. That would be.
And that's what seems to push it away, is the individual. It wants to have an experience with this, and nobody does, of course. It's the end of experience. Just totally the end of experience, because there is just no one to experience. And of course, the report that there may be an experience happening there is completely illusory. Yeah.
I think that's one of my more recent observations, is that the apparent speakers on this subject tend to come across as really very normal and ordinary.
Oh yeah.
In contrast to the message, it almost seems too ordinary, too normal.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we all find it so difficult to get our heads around it. I think you should have a halo around your head, or acting in some unusual way or strange way, but you don't. You just come across as one of us.
Well, there's no us, of course. Yeah, oh no, it's really completely simple and ordinary. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about this last week. There's just absolutely nothing special about this at all, about what we're talking about. No, of course not. No, it's a real, if the individual could know what this was, it would be really disappointed. It's a real letdown. Oh, you mean it's just this already? No, can't be it. I want the 360 directional non-dual seeing power.
Yeah. No, I just want to see it as it is.
Sure. Yeah, well, of course. I mean, but what's spoken about, the concepts that we speak about, are really attractive, of course, to the individual. Yeah. But I think it's deeper in that, when there is a resonance with this, something is sensing the freedom in the message. But it's the freedom that is what is already. The misunderstanding would be that the freedom is in the message, because then that would mean the freedom is somewhere else. And that would mean that when there isn't a message, there isn't freedom. That's not the message. There isn't a message, of course, in the end either.
No, it's just a report.
It's a report, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as a response, I would add to that.
I've just found this guy, Thomas Merton, that you mentioned. Was there anything specific that
not really. don't think I've read anything of his for about 20 years probably now. But I know he was a contemplative. I think he was a Trappist monk who was a contemplative. The reason I thought of him was because he started speaking about, well, God, because that's what he spoke about, in a different way to this kind of the more systematic kind of approach, in a much less sort of institutionalized sort of way of looking at it. There was another guy as well, Father Thomas Keating as well. He was a very sort of strict Catholic monk, and reportedly he had just sort of had a glimpse, and that really just changed his whole. He was still, I guess, a Catholic monk, but he was a real very sort of, I don't know what the right word is, but hardcore Catholic monk, very strict, apparently, very strict with his followers or students, disciples, whatever they call it in the church. And he had this quite profound glimpse by all accounts, which really just turned that whole thing upside down. He wasn't talking in this way. That certainly isn't my impression. Again, it's 20 years since I probably read those, but yeah, I just sort of mentioned that to highlight that there have been people who have kind of spoken out in a different way, shall we say.
Just before I mute myself, I want to just say to Ollie, is that how you say your name? I don't know how you stay sane if you've been doing this, coming back time and time again. I think you said years. Why are you not completely crazy? I mean, yeah. I've heard of some people just hit the message and within a few weeks of solid viewing, that's it, they're done.
Yeah.
But to come back.
Yeah, no, it can be like that. I met people who had been going to residentials and meetings, yeah, for years, and they're all back at the meetings again after the COVID as well. Yeah, I imagine some of them, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, it is very, once you've hit the message, so it is, or report, whatever, it is very difficult to see life the same again, whether you've got it conceptually or any other way. It's impossible to see life the way you did. Yeah, that can happen. So then, yeah, it would make sense. You at least want to be around people like yourself. I've called this message the last house on the block before, because what can happen is if you're unfortunate like I was and you find yourself in this meeting or in a meeting like this one, it can very often be the last house on the block for some people, not everyone, because I know when I was a seeker, it was impossible. It was just impossible to go back to sort of other things that I had seeking, sort of things that I had been doing in a way. And that doesn't have to be the case. That's just how it seemed to be here. It sort of spoiled my seeking in a way. That just seemed to naturally happen here. But you know, that's not a suggestion that it's wrong to go and do other things. Of course not. It's not going to help either way. I sort of kind of I had a sort of extreme phase where I seemed to have, it was kind of manic laughter about it sometimes. When I say earlier on, this was probably just a couple of months ago. Since then, I get phases of sort of anger, massive frustration. And that's all just in the space of a few months. And then I get that kind of like, I'm never going to one of those meetings again. Yeah. Because, you know, they're just, you say it right from the beginning, and so do they all, the apparent speakers, they all say there's nothing to get. Well, and as if there is someone who could choose whether to come to this meeting or another meeting or whatever.
But it's amazing, the power of me. It doesn't matter how many times you hear certain things over and over and over again. You get it, you hear it, it makes sense in the moment. And then 5 minutes down the road, at the end of the meeting, anything else, and it's just gone. It's gone again.
Well, the apparent individual claims everything for itself, so it'll just sort of hear this and claim the message, and that's in a way that's how it isn't heard, because it'll just sort of take this and claim it for itself, and it turn it into a story of some kind of what it thinks is being said from here. And so the message is denied. The individual is constantly denying the message. But as we've already talked about, there can be a resonance with this. That's no one's resonance. That's just resonance apparently happening, of course. But yeah, there can be all kinds of responses. Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's not a positive message. In fact, it's completely neutral, the message. In that sense, it's, I mean, the message doesn't do anything. There actually isn't a message. There would only be a message if something needed to happen.
Yeah.
It's this already, it's this. It's even that thought that just popped into her head somewhere listening to this and said, no, it's not. That's it too. Only.
Talking about like remembering the message. How can know me remember what's heard? You know, because it's in immediacy. There's no time. No. So
Well, of course, memories just appear in the immediacy of this too.
Yes, but you know,
well, like, memories have nothing to do. That's not what's meant by the knowing of the individual. In a way, the knowing of the individual is the same as the experiencing. In a way, the individual experiences. It's a knowing energy. So it's a knowing of I am, and a knowing, and then what seems to happen with that knowing of I am is an automatic knowing that this is. I am. This is. That's the apparent duality. Well, the I am is the apparent duality. So yeah, you know, memory is just a function, isn't it?
Yes, but you know, in the hearing of this message, like I hear, well, you know, there's a listening to this message, and then, you know, life goes on, and there's like a forgetting about all that, you know, there's no one to remember anything.
Well,
about.
of course, no one is remembering, no, but remembering something might happen, of course, memories. But it's, and memories have nothing to do with the apparent individual. Neither do thoughts or feelings or emotions. It doesn't actually do anything. That's, yeah, someone said earlier, you know, how powerful the individual is. It actually isn't. It's completely powerless, actually. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't cause anything. It doesn't, you know, there can be sort of a response in the physiology and the psyche in a way to that sense of there being someone there, that can sort of seem to happen. But there isn't an individual that's doing anything, or, you know, the individual isn't thinking or having beliefs or anything like that. It just seems to be a sense that there is something or someone or something here experiencing something present, an impression of a position.
Yes. Thank you, Neil.
Okay, thanks, Aidan. Message in the chat, yet there is apparent seeking and an apparent resonance with the message. So an apparent process in time and an apparent result. It seems this paradox can't really be explained at all. Yeah. Well, as I was saying earlier, it only really seems like a paradox to that experience, really, which does experience itself as being present and to be in time, and to be in, and therefore in some kind of a process. But yeah, so there is apparent seeking, yeah, and the seeking does seem to be the response to this sort of appearance of a someone. But it turns out that it is the someone that's the illusion. And because the someone is the illusion, then of course there can't be someone in a process or traveling through time. But in the end, yes, that can't be explained because there's no one here to explain that. There's no one having an experience of it in the end either. And I would even say the apparent individual isn't really having an experience of this either. All that experience seems to experience is the experience of itself. That's all it sort of knows, is the knowing of itself. It doesn't know this. It doesn't know a tree. It doesn't know a microphone. It doesn't know a meeting. It doesn't know words. It just experiences itself as being something here which is present to words happening, as something present to a microphone, the appearance of a microphone, the appearance of speaking, the appearance of a meeting, the appearance of a tree, of a window, whatever. And it seems to be with that experience that the microphone is there, the window is over there, and that it's real, and that this has meaning, purpose, is real time, real choices, real decisions. Those are all sort of symptomatic of the dream. Or aspects of the illusion. But the illusion is that there is an individual. The individual is the illusion. Comment in the chat. Seems that the me just fakes to be the owner of what is apparently arising, the mirror of the mirror, as you mentioned last time. Yeah, it's a reflection of a reflection. That's right. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's its experience, or that's its apparent experience, of course. Yeah. Just I am here and I am present. That's it. That's the whole dream. I am here. I am here. I am real. I am present. That's it. Yeah. So it's really just, it's not very much at all, but yeah. But then of course, that's the dreamer's only reality. The dream from within the dream. I am here. I am real. That's the only reality for the dream, for the dreamer in the dream. it seems to claim ownership of everything by simply being present to it, or by simply experiencing itself as being present to it. That's it. Doesn't own anything actually.
And it can never recognize itself as an illusion because it is an illusion.
Exactly. The illusion can't see out of the illusion because it is the illusion. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Apparently, it can only thin out, fade away, be
Mm,
zapped for no apparent reason into
yeah.
blithereens.
Well, in the story, that's what seems to happen. But illusion is used. What's meant by that, the word illusion, is that it's not really happening. So, of course, something that isn't really happening can't really fade away. And what seems at the end of the illusion seems to be the obviousness or the recognition that it was never really happening. It was never real. So there's no kind of deconstructing of an illusion or anything like that, because who would do that, of course?
Like a mirage.
Mm,
You just
yeah.
get closer and there's nothing to be done.
Well, there's no one to do anything, of course.
And there's no one to do anything.
Yeah. The illusion is that there is an illusion. Yeah.
That's always the part that gets me. It's like,
Mm,
that's the only glitch in all of this. It's the only thing that
mm,
there's no sense to at all.
mm.
And
Yeah,
I
no,
know it's the
totally,
me, right? It's the me talking, but the resonance is, okay,
yeah. Mm.
nothing to be done.
No, of course. Well, no one to do it, of course. Yeah.
Right.
And nowhere for anything to be done too.
And there's no doing.
Well, there's no one to do. There's apparent doing, but in the end, really, this is just completely timeless. So where would a doing happen to? Where would a falling away happen to? Where would be this place somewhere else in the future where there is a falling away? This is all there is.
Neil, hi.
Hello.
And you don't know that when you say it, right? When you
No,
say
no,
this is like timeless, la 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 la,
no.
you don't know it.
No, because there's nothing having an experience of something as being timeless.
Mm.
Mm.
So in a way, there is also no coming back to any meeting because there is no, I think there is no repetition of any moment so far. It's like, everything is like a singular happening, so to speak.
Oh,
Like
totally. Yeah, there isn't
yeah,
another meeting.
yeah.
Of course not. So if you're waiting for next meeting to fall away, you're screwed.
Or you could also say that if you find yourself in an apparent other meeting, no problem.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah, there's no problem with anything actually in that sense. I mean, you know, it doesn't help. This doesn't help.
Yeah,
This meeting doesn't help
no, it doesn't.
because there isn't a somewhere else. There isn't a somewhere else for liberation to happen. It's impossible for this to be helpful because there is no one, and there isn't a somewhere else for an apparent someone to fall away to. What's recognized in the end is that there just is no one. That's just it. There just is no one.